Thank you very much, Jeremy. You asked me to review the history of how we were able to pass 15 years ago resolutions through the House and the Senate for Congress to express regret for the passage of the Chinese exclusion laws. That was an effort that took more than 3 years. I can recall my initial effort starting in 2009 in the office of Representative Judy Chu. She had been elected in a special election in July of 2009. Fairly shortly thereafter, the meeting was held with various Chinese American and other Asian American groups seeking to know how such a resolution could be developed. As I was at Covington and Burling then, as an attorney, the firm agreed to take on the project on a pro bono basis. That meant that we were able to put the resources of the firm behind effort to research what wound up being a very, very substantial legislative history, and to help Representative Chu and the Senate sponsor, Senator Scott Brown of Massachusetts, with the text of their resolutions. It was not a function of just looking at one piece of legislation. People have heard of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, but there were really 8 pieces of legislation. One in 1879 that was vetoed, a 20-year exclusion law in 1882 that was vetoed, then the 1882 10-year law that was passed, and following that, there were extensions and revisions in 1884, 1888, 1892, 1902, and finally in 1904, permanent law until the laws were repealed as a whole in 1943 at the request of President Franklin Roosevelt. When Representative Chu decided to move forward with that legislation, she needed to do so on a bipartisan basis. So those of us who were leading the effort on the outside helped her to find a Republican co-sponsor who was Representative Judy Biggert of Massachusetts. On the Senate side, as I mentioned, the sponsor was Scott Brown. He needed a Democratic co-sponsor, and that was Dianne Feinstein of California. I would point out that Representative Chu and Senator Brown were both freshman members of the minority party in their respective chambers at the time they moved this legislation. Legislation was referred to the Judiciary Committee of each House, so it was introduced on May 26, 2011, went to the House Judiciary Committee and to the Senate Judiciary Committee. The Senate acted first. The chair of the Judiciary Committee was Patrick Leahy of Vermont. His ranking member was Chuck Grassley of Iowa. They agreed in September to have the committee discharged and to bring up the resolution on the Senate floor. That happened on October 6, 2011, and the resolution passed by unanimous consent. So we were through the Senate. We still had to be concerned about the House. And in the House, there was a greater degree of controversy about this, mostly from people who fundamentally said that they didn't want a resolution that appeared to frown upon controls on immigration. It actually did much more than that because it also talked about the fact that people who were legally in the United States, who were not therefore immigrating into the United States, could not naturalize as American citizens because in the context of those laws, Congress had decided that they could not assimilate and so therefore were not suitable to be American citizens and so barred them from citizenship. So the legislation involved immigration. It also involved naturalization. That created controversy in the House. And it wound up passing because of the influence of one individual in particular, who was the chief of staff to the House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. His name was Neil Bradley. Neil and I had spoken at great length about these resolutions, and it was something that the leader wanted to see pass the House. When the Judiciary Committee seized up with the controversy, He called the staff director of the House Judiciary Committee and said, the leader wants this to pass. He wants it to come to the floor. Work this out with Representative Chu and find an appropriate compromise. And that is what we did. So in the final analysis, the Chu resolution, which passed on June 8th, 2012, is not exactly the same as the Brown resolution that had passed in 2011. They were the same on the date of introduction, but the texts are a bit different now, but the fundamentals of them are identical. So we were able, over this period, 2010 basically to 2012, to successfully get the Senate and the House on record on this topic. After that was done, it was very important that the book not close on this subject, because it could have just happened that way and gathered dust on a shelf for years, people forgetting what had been accomplished. So we continued an education program for quite a long time thereafter and periodically revive it, like we're doing right now. But I probably spoke 50 times to largely Chinese American or Asian American groups from New York to Honolulu in the years that followed the passage of those resolutions, in an effort to ensure that people not only understood what Congress had finally done, but what Congress had done in the first place in terms of the legislative history of how all of that very sad story developed. So we had success, I am proud to say, and I am also proud again to emphasize that Covington and Burling, who I'm no longer a partner, but I was at the time, that Covington and Burling was proud to do this for the community on a pro bono basis. Happy to take questions if there are.